I got back onto WhatsApp. They invited me back. They got me back. And it wasn't her. The moderator of the forum didn't do it. It's the creator of the forum, Nisringananda. Yeah. So now I know. I got some questions about my Skype too. Maybe before I leave, I could. A little confusing. It was pretty simple, and then Microsoft bought it, and it got complicated. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti namane nama om. Le Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti namane namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sri Advaita Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Gora Haribo Haribo Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Hare, Rama Rama, Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Let's all say Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Srila Prabhupada Ki. Hare Krishna. How y'all feeling? Good. Well, the blood's in the belly and not the head. I hope the Lord we don't drop dead. Something. What? Huh? Oh, it's a little dark. Yeah, why don't you like that? Yeah, with me it's all about the asides, right? Okay, here we go. Fearlessly launching into our most intense lesson after lunch. Lesson 8, this is the first lesson of Prayojana, where we deepen our love for Srila Prabhupada. How are we doing? Does she need an alternative, a positive alternative? Does she? Usually coloring books work. I didn't mean to send her out. I'd just get her something better to do. Lesson 8, to love is to cooperate. Srila Prabhupada's well-known desire that we cooperate to spread Krishna consciousness to every town and village was more than a farewell request as he was preparing to leave this world. It was a theme he voiced continually during his 12 years of non-stop preaching round the globe. Yet, in spite of Prabhupada's mandate that we work together, cooperation can be hard to find in the age of quarrel, where non-cooperation too often prevails. In this key lesson on cooperation, we'll see up close why cooperation can be so elusive, as well as what we can do to foster it. So Maharaj is going to tell us what this image is of. Famous.
What you can't see is also quite incredible. There are thousands of people out there, and it's a Rath Yatra. San Francisco, year 1975? Four. Okay. 1974, Prabhupada got on the stage and started jumping straight up and down. The crowd went wild. And then Prabhupada started throwing flowers to the crowd, and it went even wilder. It was a very, when we say, momentous moment in Krishna consciousness. Yeah.
Thank you. So this image of Srila Prabhupada, surrounded by a diversity of leaders, is a reminder that devotion to our founder Acharya is the key to finding the unity we'll need to survive the ravages of time and take Lord Chaitanya's mission to every town and village. So these are all leaders Oh. Okay. Oop. Back. So there's Srila Prabhupada, there's Guru Kripa, Maharaj at the time, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Jayatirtha, when Prabhupada started jumping, Jayatirtha nearly jumped out of his skin. If you've seen the movie, he just starts flying. Bahudak, the president of Vancouver. This is the Hridayananda Maharaj with the Prabhupada cap on, so you can't really see him there. Bhaktadas, San Francisco president at the time. Anyways, there's Sudama, he's leading. He's in Tripurari before he took sannyas. He's got a brahmachari pleat. Yeah, and they're all very strong-minded people, very different individuals, but they're all cooperating for Prabhupada's sake to spread his movement. So that's what we have to do. Okay. All right. To love is to serve. Soon after joining Srila Prabhupada as his servant, Shrutikirti lamented he lacked the intense love for his divine grace the devotees displayed at airport receptions. Concerned about his new servant, Srila Prabhupada asked Shrutikirti if he liked serving him. Oh yes, Srila Prabhupada, Shrutikirti replied. I like serving you very much. Where's the mic? Oh, well, why don't we give it to Prabhu? So Prabhupada replied.
So, you just do your service, he continued. That is all that is necessary. This is what love means, to do service.
Yeah. Prabhupada didn't translate bhakti as love or devotion. He translated it as devotional service. It's what you do when you love somebody. You want to do something for them. More challenging than serving alone is serving cooperatively with the Lord's devotees, many of whom may be quite different from us. Okay. Want to pass? Akhilesh, you may as well sit closer. Want to read that?
To serve cooperatively is the test of love.
Determined that ISKCON not repeat the breakup of the Gaudiya mission after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance, Srila Prabhupada admonished his disciples to cooperate, perhaps most famously at the time of making his final will. So what happened was Prabhupada, he was, when 1977 dawned, Prabhupada's health started to go. Actually, even before then. But it became obvious that Prabhupada was in failing health in early 77. And he was so weak, actually, during the Mayapur festival in March, that he stopped giving class. He had to have somebody else give class. And then afterwards, in May, the devotees took Srila Prabhupada, well, first Prabhupada went to Bombay, and then they had an idea that perhaps if they went to Rishikesh, and, Upper Ganga, that Prabhupada could take advantage of the beautiful, the clean air, the holy place, and maybe start to turn around his health. Well, they were there, but it didn't really work. You may have seen, there's films of Prabhupada on that little boat in the Ganges in May 77, and Prabhupada's looking incredibly wan and weak and thin. So when that didn't work, then Prabhupada said, well, perhaps this is the end, and if it is, then I have to go to Vrindavan, because Prabhupada would say, to live in Vrindavan, to be born in Vrindavan is good, to live there is better, to die there is best. And all the devotees are very sad, but Prabhupada's saying this, so they went to Vrindavan. And as they they pulled in to Krishna Balaram Mandir, so many devotees were there, but they hadn't seen Prabhupada in quite a while, and so they were totally shocked when they saw his skeletal frame, and Prabhupada acknowledged their reception, but then he told them why he had come, because this looks like it's the end, and their ecstasy turned into agony very quickly. On May 17th, he arrived, and it was very soon after that Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who had taken over as the personal servant in April, said, well, Srila Prabhupada, do you think it's time, if you think that your time on this earth is coming to a close, do you think it's time to make a will? So Prabhupada said, yes. Call all the GBC. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj reports in his diary that when Prabhupada said that, Tamal was thinking, wow, this is going to be quite an endeavor. It's going to be very expensive for all the leaders to fly here, the topmost leaders in the movement after Prabhupada. And probably the service globally will suffer because when the cat's away, the mice will play. So he felt obliged to ask Srila Prabhupada, are you sure you want all of them to come? And he voiced his reasons. And Prabhupada said, yes, they must come. Because Prabhupada's been grooming the GBC to take over ISKCON management since 1970, since July 70, the month I joined. And he really wants them to come and experience the gravity of the changing of the guard, the management guard. So when DKG sees Prabhupada's resolve, he says, oh, I'm sure they will all come, Srila Prabhupada. They love you so much. To which Srila Prabhupada replied unsentimentally,
your love for me, said Srila Prabhupada, will be shown by how much you cooperate to keep this institution together after I am gone.
On May 23rd, Srila Prabhupada signed the will and echoed his earlier statement about his disciples' love for him. So Prabhupada said a similar thing after the will was done, and here it is.
Srila Prabhupada emphasized, your love for me will be tested, how after my departure you maintain this institution. We have glamour and people are feeling our weight. This should be maintained.
What did Prabhupada mean by glamour? That sounds like a Bollywood word. Yeah, we have prestige, not just famous, because a lot of flaky people are famous too. We've been around for 10, 11 years as an organization, ISKCON, and we're not going away. And people are feeling our weight, mainly the books. This is not a fly-by-night movement. This is based on solid, timeless knowledge. This should be maintained. And then Prabhupada said, not like Gaudiya Math, after Guru Maharaj left, so many Acharyas, meaning imitation founder Acharyas, came up. So, Srila Prabhupada made statements about cooperation being the measure of our devotion throughout his preaching pastimes, not just at the end. For example, here's a quote from October 9th, 1968, Seattle. When you do something in cooperation with the Lord, that is called bhakti. Prabhupada defined bhakti as cooperation, working together. And then from the middle of his Leela, December 73, a letter, quote, the test of our actual dedication and sincerity to serve the spiritual master will be in this mutual cooperative spirit to push on this movement and not make factions and deviate, which is the general tendency. I don't get my way, I walk off in a huff and I start something else. I start my own faction. But he's saying, no, don't do that. Work it out. Okay. Okay, so to discover some keys to cooperation, let's enter into what I call a Prabhupada dialectic. Dialectics from the Greeks thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Point, counterpoint, resolution. So it's pretty simple. If Prabhupada's point, his thesis, is that we must cooperate, what is his antithesis, his counterpoint? There's Prabhupada with a mudra again, this time with a pointer finger of his left hand. Okay, don't expect utopia. This is a phrase from a famous letter. So, Akhilesh, you're holding the mic. Can you tell us what's going on in the bottom picture?
Krishna is leaving Vrindavan.
Well, who's taking him?
Akrur.
Akrura. Akrura means what? Do you know what Akrura means?
Not cruel.
Not cruel. And who else is in the picture?
All the gopis and Lord Balram.
All the gopis. And the gopis are pure devotees, and Akrura is a pure devotee, and there's Krishna Balaram on the chariot, and there are the horses. So the gopis are saying, you're Akrura means not cruel, but we think you're very cruel to try to take Krishna Balaram out of Vrindavan, and they're prepared to lay down their lives. They want to block the horses. I call the gopis the original Occupy people. You know, the Occupy movement we had a few years ago, when all the disenfranchised people laid down in front of the machinery of government and business as a protest. Well, the gopis, now the gopis are pure devotees. In fact, they're the topmost. Gopi Bhartu Pada Kabalayor Dasa Dasa Anudas. Lord Chaitanya said, I'm the servant of the husband of the gopis. 100 times removed. I thought pure devotees all got along. What's going on here? Hmm? Oh.
Don't expect utopia.
Don't expect. Okay, let's. Yes, you're right. So let's get the.
Get the essence of it.
Yeah, let's get to the letter that occasioned this. So first, I'll give you some background. Yeah, Prabhupada wrote a letter
To Karandar.
Well, he wrote a letter to
Kirtananda.
Achariya Rishi. That's the Kirtananda is the next letter. Okay, so in 1972, a GBC godbrother of ours named Achariya Rishi Prabhu, Iranian-American MBA, Harvard MBA, joined the movement a little later than most, a little older than a lot of us. He was already an MBA, Master in Business Administration. He was on the GBC. So he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. Where is it? Oh, yeah. So he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada complaining that his GBC colleagues, they're always fighting because they're such impersonalists. They treat each other so insensitively, and therefore they're always fighting, and it's because they're impersonalists. So, sure, a lot of fighting went on, and maybe Prabhupada could have granted the point, but Prabhupada, first of all, wanted to deal with the mentality of his disciple, Achariya Rishi, who had a lot of qualifications, but he knew that his disciple needed to hear something about who devotees are and what devotees are, and why there's disagreement sometimes. So here's an excerpt from the letter. Quote, "It is not so much that because there may be some faults in our God brothers and God sisters, or because there may be some mismanagement or lack of cooperation, that this is due to being impersonalists. No. It is the nature of the living condition to always have some fault. Even in the spiritual world, there is some fault and envy. But it is not the same as material fault or material envy. It is transcendental because it is all based on Krishna." And then Prabhupada gives an example. "Sometimes when one gopi would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, 'Oh, she has done so nicely. Now, let me do better for pleasing Krishna.' That is envy, but it is transcendental without malice." What's malice? Yes, instead of being a well-wisher, I'm an ill-wisher. Hey, Prabhu, why don't you take a long walk off a short pier, right? That's called malice, if I'm serious, right? Okay, so that is without malice. So we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia. Rather, that is impersonalism. So in the spiritual world, it's not that Srimati Radharani and Chandravali necessarily get along all the time. They're from rival camps. But what are they doing? They're all trying to serve Krishna. They just have different ways of going about it. There's left-wing gopis and right-wing gopis, and my God, it sounds so political, doesn't it? But there's intrigue in the spiritual world, but it's all based on pleasing and serving Krishna. There's no difference of opinion there. Okay, so where's the mic? You have it. You wanted to read the letter? Okay.
I think of an example when Prabhupada was really in his last days. He wanted to go around Govardhan Hill in the, bullock cart. And then some devotees were saying, no, this will kill Prabhupada. And others were saying, well, if Prabhupada wants it, it'll be good for him. So they were both arguing for Prabhupada's best interest. But they were arguing. So that was...
Yeah, if you hear the recordings, they're so concerned about Prabhupada, but from opposite perspectives.
Yeah.
So that's transcendental. Good. Transcendental disagreement. Now let's, why don't we go, did you read? Okay. So this is another part of the letter. Prabhupada's preaching to his, you see, what he detects in Achariya is some pride. So he wants to set his disciples straight.
People should not expect that even in the Krishna consciousness society, there will be utopia. Because devotees are persons, therefore there will always be some lacking. But the difference is that their lackings have become transcendental, because despite everything they may do, their topmost intention is to serve Krishna.
And there you have it in a nutshell. The beginning of cooperation is that we trust each other's motives, intentions. The worst thing is when we impugn each other's motives. Oh, you're just in it for the money. You're just in it for the power. You're just in it for the Mahaprasadam. That's when it really hurts. And that's when cooperation just goes down the tubes. Here's how Prabhupada finished the letter. He really drives it home here. The devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that, and like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar, or the best qualities of a person, not like the utopians, who are like the flies, who always go to the open sores, or find the faults in a person, and because they cannot find any utopia, or because they cannot find anyone without faults, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So if there is sometimes slight disagreements between devotees, and those slight disagreements, they get pretty fast and furious, it is not due to impersonalism, but it is because they are persons. And such disagreements should not be taken very seriously. I mean, only Krishna has infinite capacity to relate to all of his infinite parts and parcels. So it's very natural that because of not only our conditioned natures, but our liberated natures, we're going to be able to get close to some devotees and not to others, just because we're all individual. Only God can do that. God has infinite capacity to relate to everybody, and everybody's really different. So we just have to understand that and accept it. If Prabhupada's thesis is that we cooperate and his antithesis is not to expect utopia, then what is his synthesis? Point, cooperate, counterpoint, don't expect utopia. Resolution, it's the next letter that you already mentioned. And first letter was February 72, yeah. And the second letter is from October 73. So why don't we keep passing here?
Oh, find unity in diversity.
Right. So this is a similar, a little similar. There's one similar. Is that Kirtanananda Maharaj, he's at New Vrindavan, and he's writing to Prabhupada, reporting that there's dissension in the ranks. There's politics. There's, trouble. So Prabhupada writes him back. But first, let's underscore that last point I just made. The first step to finding transcendent unity amid our often dizzying diversity is trusting we all share the same goal, pure devotional service to Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's mission. Trust or mistrust comes from experience. Only with trust can we move forward together and sometimes agree to disagree and not be bothered by that. In the 1973 letter to Kirtanananda Maharaj, Prabhupada reveals the secret to finding unity in diversity. First, Srila Prabhupada describes the challenge. So here's the challenge. Quote, material nature means dissension and disagreement, especially in this Kali Yuga. But for this Krishna consciousness movement, its success will depend on agreement, even though there are varieties of engagements. In the material world, there are varieties, but there is no agreement. In the spiritual world, there are varieties, but there is agreement. That is the difference. Okay, gonna read?
The materialist, without being able to adjust the varieties and the disagreements, makes everything zero. They cannot come into agreement with varieties, but if we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in varieties. This is called unity in diversity.
Yeah, Prabhupada gave the example of you throw a pebble in a pond, and if you're able to hit the center, the same spot every time, all those circles that radiate from the center, they won't clash, they won't conflict, because you have the common center. But if you have many centers, then they're always clashing. And this is called unity and diversity. And now listen to the next screen. Prabhupada thought this was so important that he said this.
I am therefore suggesting that all our men meet in Mayapur every year during the birth anniversary of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. With all GBC and senior men present, we should discuss how to make unity in diversity.
Every year. This should be the theme of the AGM, the Annual General Meeting, because Prabhupada knows how incredibly diverse we are. So to try to bring back the unity, you got to really discuss this. A few years ago in Mayapur, 2016, if you're in ISKCON, you may have heard of it if you weren't there. There was such conflict before the GBC meeting, I mean violent conflict. And it was three different groups of people who had different, gripes, agendas or gripes, and they all conflicted right at the same time, practically in the same place. It was like a perfect storm of conflict. And no one knew what was going on because everybody had different perspectives on the conflict. But there was violence, and there was a real threats against the GBC. So when the GBC came, they had to deal with it. And they couldn't do their own agenda because, at least in my view, Lord Chaitanya was showing everyone how far we have to go to come to some understanding amongst each other about the way forward. So, and some of the conflicts were over the TOVP, at least one of the conflicts. So I started thinking, before Lord Chaitanya is going to allow us to manifest this wonder of the world, this incredible project, he wants us to build the temple in our hearts so that the people, when they come to see this, and they will come just to see the building, they're going to see a community to match it, a better way to live with better relationships, and it really will be the United Nations of the spiritual world, not just in name, but in behavior. So, yeah, Prabhupada, he wanted this to be done every year. And it's more relevant than ever. It's not just something he said in 1973 in a letter and now it's lost its relevance. No. Okay.
Can I add something which I think is really fundamental? And there's a Srimad Bhagavatam purport and verse from 4th canto, 30th chapter, verse number 8, where Prabhupada deals with this whole situation in the entire purport. He talks about unity and diversity. It's the verse where Lord Vishnu is congratulating the Prachetas.
Okay, this is right. This is coming in the lesson.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, so don't give it away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is great. Yeah, it's so good what Maharaj has raised. I inserted it in the lesson, so
okay.
You can make further comments. Yeah, it's great. But we got to get there. So how to do this? How to do unity and diversity? Unity and diversity may sound good in principle, but how do we find it in practice, especially in the age of Kali, the age of disunity? Okay, so there's Prabhupada in Bhaktivedanta Manor. I always thought it was Germany, but some British devotees set me straight when I was presenting there. On a morning walk. So I say, we have to unite around principles, but the details we have to diversify. To pursue unity and diversity, we need to identify and agree on timeless, universal principles, whose applications will vary according to the details of, quote, time, candidate, and country. Okay, so let's go there. Okay, so I'm going to show you now two of my favorite purports about unity and diversity from the Bhagavatam. Well, first CC, and then from the Bhagavatam. Where's the...
So over here.
Oh. All right, why don't you read?
The teacher, Acharya, has to consider time, candidate, and country. What is possible in one country may not be possible in another. The Acharya's duty is to accept the essence of devotional service. The essence of devotional service must be taken into consideration and not the outward paraphernalia.
And then elsewhere in the purport, Prabhupada continues this theme. Quote, it is not necessary that the rules and regulations followed in India be exactly the same as those in Europe, America, and other Western countries. We should not follow regulative principles without an effect. Nor should we fail to accept the regulative principles. What's the Sanskrit word for that? We should not follow the regulative principles without an effect, nor should we fail to follow the regulative principles.
Niyamagraha.
Niyamagraha, which includes agraha also. We shouldn't blindly follow rules, nor should we fail to follow the rules. But we should follow with purpose and good result. What is required is a special technique according to country, time, and candidate. Now, what was Prabhupada's special technique? Prabhupada's complete surrender to the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Lord Chaitanya empowered him with that, quote, special technique to spread Krishna consciousness around the world. So where there's a will, there's a way. So Prabhupada was so determined to fulfill the order of his Guru Maharaj and Lord Chaitanya that Krishna gave him the intelligence to know how to do it in different times, places, and with different people. And the way he did it was very different all over the world. He was very sensitive to where he was, who he was with, and the historical circumstances surrounding where he was. To help us learn that technique, that special technique, it sounds mysterious, right? But it's not really mysterious. It just requires absolute surrender. Yeah, but when you do that, you get the intelligence and the ability to do it. To help us learn that technique, Prabhupada continues to explain. Okay. So here's another purport excerpt, similar. You can read this too, Maran.
One has to consider the particular time, country, and conveniences. What is convenient in India may not be convenient in the Western countries. If someone does go and preach, taking all risks and allowing all considerations for time and place, it might be that there are changes in the manner of worship, but that is not at all faulty according to Shastra.
Mm-hmm. Of course, even if we're sensitive to, quote, time, candidate, and country, we may still disagree about principles and details. What exactly is adjustable according to country, time, and candidate, and what is not? To continue pursuing unity and diversity, which is really the key to cooperation, we must learn to distinguish principles from details and trust that despite our diversity, we really all do share the same goal, to advance the mission of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now we try to drill down a little further and look at really what are principles and what are details. Even advanced Vaishnavas sometimes disagree about what are timeless, absolute principles and what are relative adjustable details. Here's another anecdote from Shrutakirti. So here's the situation. Shrutakirti actually traveled with Prabhupada more than any other servant. Harishari Prabhu, he did keep the best diary, so we have 5 volumes so far and more to come from Transcendental Diary. Shrutakirti wrote, What is the Difficulty? Has anybody read? It's a great book. You all should read that if you haven't. And you really get up close and personal with Srila Prabhupada and Shrutakirti. So in 72, Shrutakirti Prabhu was accompanying Prabhupada in Mayapur at the groundbreaking of the Mayapur project. And Srila Prabhupada invited many of his godbrothers. And a lot of them came. And on the one hand, they appreciated what Swami Maharaj was doing, turning so many Videshis, Mlechas, Yavanas to Vaishnavas, but they had issues with him. One of the issues was that Prabhupada was allowing us to call him Prabhupada, which, at least as far as they were concerned, was only reserved for the likes of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada dealt with that in one way, but they had a bigger concern. The bigger concern was that Prabhupada was allowing men and women to serve together in the same centers. That's a complete no-no as far as they were concerned, because there's a principle, it's a law of nature. In the 7th canto, Narada Muni is telling Maharaj Yudhisthira that a man is like butter in a pot and a lady's like fire, and you put the pot too close to the fire and the butter's going to melt. So Swami Maharaj, you're inviting scandal. And by then, scandals had happened, scandals were happening, scandals would happen. But Prabhupada is operating in a higher principle. He tried to convince his godbrothers, or at least inform them, you know, when I went to the West, you know what I found? That boys and girls are freely mixing together from the time they're toddlers. And then they go to school together, they're educated the same way. You can't change a culture overnight. What is he supposed to do? Prevent half the human race from getting the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Because outside those little urban communes, those islands of Krishna consciousness, there was no supportive culture for Bhakti Yoga. So that's what he tried to tell them. Now that was in March of 72. Shrutakirti keeps serving Prabhupada around the world. And then Shruta writes this. We arrived in Manila, Philippines, on October 11, 1972. Just before lunch on the 12th, I was massaging Srila Prabhupada in his hotel room. While I was rubbing the mustard oil on his back, Srila Prabhupada said, and this is just out of the blue. My godbrothers criticize me that I have allowed women to live in our temples. It's still on his mind 5 months later. This is not done in India, but I have become successful because I made this adjustment. For Prabhupada, he was adjusting a detail, or at the very most, he was adjusting a lower principle. It was, in his mind, it wasn't the highest principle, which is giving people access to Mahaprabhu's mercy. He then became quiet. Now, when Prabhupada went quiet, Srila Kirti writes that his mind started thinking, I've got to ask Prabhupada a question now, and I've got to get the words right. Finally, I said, how about Gokul? Whoop, let's get this.
Prabhupada, how can we tell the difference between making an adjustment and changing a principle?
There it is, the $108,000 question. Isn't this what most of our squabbles are about? Yeah. Okay, listen to this.
Prabhupada closed his eyes and I continued to rub his body. Finally, he opened his eyes and responded, "That requires a little intelligence."
A little intelligence and a lot of heart. That's got to be the understatement of the Yuga. I mean, his own godbrothers, whose qualifications are light years ahead of mine, they didn't get it. But Prabhupada knows how to adjust principles, higher principles, lower principles, details. Now, in the room with Srila Prabhupada and Shruti Kirti was Burijan Prabhu, our ISKCON educator, who later made an observation about this incident in his book, My Glorious Master. Okay, how about Keshav Prabhu, why don't you read Burijan's comment, observation.
To foolishly mistake a non-adjustable principle for an adjustable detail will cause havoc in spiritual life, and to accept each detail as if it can never be adjusted is fanaticism. Fanaticism will cause havoc of a different nature.
Yeah, if I think a principle is a detail, like if I think 16 rounds is a detail, I mean, it's a principle and a detail. The principle is Jan Hare Krishna, and that quota might vary from master to master. Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami say this in Nectar of Devotion. The details do differ from master to master. But as far as ISKCON is concerned, that's ironclad for initiated devotees. So, now I'm older, so say I start initiating people with 4, let's go to 4 rounds, okay? We'll make it easy. We'll do it KC light. Hey, good luck. You know, I mean, Prabhupada, he can do, and when Prabhupada had that first initiation, you remember, he went from 64 to 32 to 16. Then he said, no less. That's it, rock bottom, no less. But if I want to start to imitate that and then go even further down, I'm really, setting myself for aparadh, for really blocking the flow of Prabhupada's mercy. It's not that I can do that. On the other hand, if I know how Prabhupada did something like, say, in Denver in 1975, when Prabhupada was there in June, and then insist that the way Prabhupada did it in Denver in June 1975 is the way it has to be done this all the time for every country all over the world, that's fanatic. So it's no small thing, actually, to know the difference between an adjustable detail and a non-adjustable principle. It requires transcendental intelligence. Okay, so let's go now. Now in 1974, while translating Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita, Srila Prabhupada directly answered his godbrother's above-mentioned criticism while commenting on Adi Leela 737. So the godbrother said, you can't do this. You can't have men and women serving together in these centers. You're inviting scandal. And Prabhupada, he just told Sri Kirti, it's because I have made this adjustment that I have become successful. He's crediting that adjustment, his success, to that adjustment. So in CC, Adi 737, Prabhupada starts philosophically, and then he directly addresses his godbrother's criticism. Prabhupada used to do this when it was of universal significance and application. He would weave in his unprecedented experience spreading Krishna consciousness around the world into his purports. Quote, an Acharya should devise a means by which people may somehow or other come to Krishna consciousness. First, they should become Krishna conscious, and all the prescribed rules and regulations may later gradually be introduced. Who is Prabhupada paraphrasing there? First, they should become Krishna conscious, and all the rules and regulations may gradually be introduced. He's paraphrasing our Srila Rupa Goswami, who wrote our law book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar Devotion. You know the verse? Yena tena Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet sarve virinished hasyor etayore vakinkaraham. Huh?
Just a reference clearance. It's in CC, but it's referenced somewhere else.
Well, Rupa Goswami, you remember the Goswamis scrutinizingly studied all the revealed scriptures and then wrote books. So it was Sri Rupa, perhaps quoting Mahabharata.
Yeah, I think it is from the Mahabharata.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somehow, yena tena, somehow or other, get them to be Krishna conscious. Sarve vidi, all the vidis, all the rules and regulations of Shastra, etayore vakinkaraha, should be maid servants of this highest principle of getting people to be Krishna conscious. Confirmed. So what did Prabhupada do in the very beginning with his wild, wild Westerners? He just got them to chant Hare Krishna. He gave them a higher taste. And only after the third initiation did one of the first initiates in 1966 came up to Swamiji. We even know the exact date because of the date of the notice he wrote. Hey, Swamiji, are there any rules to this club? I mean, I'm just paraphrasing, but that was the mood.
Who was it?
Any rule? And so what did Prabhupada say? Prabhupada's mood was, I thought you'd never ask. Prabhupada did not impose, he mentioned the rules, but he more stressed the chanting of Hare Krishna, which is the higher taste. So the next day, only after the disciple asked for it, did Prabhupada post, all initiated devotees must, and it reads like a mini Hari Bhakti Vilas for the Lower East Side, must avoid all kinds of intoxicating habit. That's the first. Must chant a minimum of 16 rounds on beads daily. Must have no illicit sexual connection. Must not mix intimately with non-devotees. Must not engage in unnecessary sporting. And then there's more, and then he said, he signs it A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and then he writes the Maha Mantra. Now this, I've seen this notice handwritten by Prabhupada, enshrined. It's in Ljubljana, on the wall, the temple wall. I've seen it in other walls too. And if you go to Mayapur, you go behind Prabhupada's Vyasasana where the Madhajis make the garlands, and you see it right there. Yeah, but Prabhupada, and after he wrote that, he posted it on the bathroom door at 26 2nd Avenue, so all the devotees could read it. And the devotees were kind of stunned. Oh, this is what we signed up for? Wow. This is heavy, man. But by then they already had a higher. By then they were hooked on Krishna consciousness and Swamiji and the whole vision that Prabhupada had. So In our Krishna consciousness movement, we follow this policy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For example, and here he is, he's going to go right to the jugular now, addressing his godbrother's complaints. For example, since boys and girls in the Western countries freely intermingle, special concessions regarding their customs and habits, that's pretty generous, their customs and habits. Actually, there's no culture there. Special concessions regarding their customs and habits are necessary to bring them to Krishna consciousness. The Acharya must devise a means to bring them to devotional service. Now notice, those special concessions, which means the details of applying principles according to time, place, candidate, country, they must always, quote, bring them to Krishna consciousness. If myself as a, say I have disciples and I make adjustments for a disciple, that adjustment will always have to improve the disciple. It's not that it keeps the disciple on the same platform or it brings the disciple down. It always must bring them up to Krishna consciousness. As Srila Prabhupada advised, Palena parachiyate, you have to judge a thing by its result. Because sometimes we don't know the result. We have an idea from Guru Sadhu Shastra that something might be okay. Prabhupada, he was always experimenting with us, the first generation of his followers. He let us do a rock opera. He let us have a political party. And there was no harm in either one in principle, but he stopped both of those because we couldn't handle it. We started to get degraded by it, by the very same activity. So sometimes you don't know until you get a result. But Prabhupada was trying things. So, whom does the Lord bless to distinguish principles from details and achieve unity in diversity? The master key to cooperation. Okay, so Maharaj has the mic, and now we're going to let him read the pastime he was alluding to before.
The Lord blesses the Prachetas.
Yes. So
10 brothers, right?
Yeah. So you may remember the Prachetas are the 10 sons of King Barhishat, Maharaj Prachani Barhi. And they're going to be his successors. So he sent them off to do tapas, learn sense control. And they met Lord Shiva. And there's a beautiful chapter called Chanting the Song, sung by Lord Shiva. So that was they learned that from Lord Shiva. And then later on, they went underwater to do tapas, and they were remembering this song by Lord Shiva, all about the Supreme Lord. And the Lord was so pleased with them that he gave his submarine darshan. Look, he's coming in the water there. So, let's see here. Okay. Okay, so Maharaj, you want to read this? This is the verse now.
My dear sons of the king, I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, devotional service.
Yes, one occupation. Now these were 10 heirs to the throne. Heavy-duty, purebred Kshatriyas, right? So there's every opportunity for them to have some disagreements or some envy or jockeying for position or, but no, they were surrendered to the order of their father to become fit to rule, and they have friendly dealings. So now the rest of the verse.
I am so pleased with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me.
See, he's pleased by their friendly dealings, their cooperative spirit. It's because of that they're qualified to get a benediction. And now listen to this in the purport. Prabhupada writes, quote, since the sons of King Prachani Barhishat were all united in Krishna consciousness, the Lord was very pleased with them. Each and every one of the sons of King Prachani Barhishat was an individual soul, but they were united in offering transcendental service to the Lord. The unity of the individual souls attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Lord is real unity. Because it's natural for the soul to serve Krishna, and it's natural for the souls to cooperate to serve Krishna. And so the Lord's pleased. Disunity between individual souls, this is the other side of it, is so strong that within this material world, that even in a society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and leaning toward material things. So again, Prabhupada is indirectly weaving in our struggles to cooperate into his purport, but he's going to give the conclusion here. Actually, in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. Even Srimati Radharani and Srimati Chandravali, there's no difference of opinion about who they want to please. Krishna's wonderful, he's the greatest. They're just going about it in different ways, and they don't really agree on how to do that, so they have their own little intrigues, their camps. There is only one goal, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. If there is some disagreement over service, such disagreement is to be taken as spiritual. So as long as our motives are good, as long as we're rightly situated in our determination to serve Krishna, even if we have disagreements, those are spiritual disagreements. And we shouldn't think just because someone doesn't see things my way, therefore the person is insincere or materially motivated. No, not necessarily. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be disunited in any circumstance because they're united in trying to please Krishna, even if they can't do it together. This makes the Supreme Lord very happy and willing to award all kinds of benedictions to his devotees as indicated in this verse. That's Prabhupada. And then I make a little observation here. According to the above verse and purport, if we want to find unity in diversity, friendly relationships among ourselves will inspire the Lord to grant us this benediction. When our exchanges are respectful, friendly, and loving, despite our differences, the Lord will bless us with a cooperative spirit needed to carry Krishna consciousness to every town and village on earth. So again, when that whole conflict erupted in Mayapur, the Lord was just showing us, you guys have a long way to go. So you better go deeper. And you can't just be Jai Prabhu devotees. You've got to actually find more unity amidst your global diversity here. Okay, so that's a big hint of how to get the Lord's boon and mercy. We've got to be friends. We've got to at least get along. Even if I can't get close to someone, I have to respect the person, and that person with me too. The devotees are always respectful, even if they're not able to work closely together. We're going to give the last word on how to cooperate and why cooperate to Srila Prabhupada. And he did this in Mayapur. There's Srila Prabhupada with his mudra again. There's a young Yadavar, Brahmananda. I think that's Paramhans Maharaj. I'm not sure who that is. That's Panchadravida. And then Prabhupada is stopping to make a point, punctuating it with his open left palm, which he did a lot. You see a lot of shots like that. So here's what happened. On March 16th, I believe, Prabhupada gave his darshan to the leading book distributors in the world at the time. It was the 100 brahmacharis that made up the Radha Damodar American traveling party. So for their being number one that year, they were sent to India, and they all somehow made it into Prabhupada's room in the Lotus building. Must have been quite a trick. Not a very big room. Prabhupada chose to address them about the absolute necessity of cooperation. The recording is a little annoying because it's got this buzz, attached to it, which I guess the archives couldn't get out. But you'll see the words. And to love us to cooperate, Here we go. Cooperate. I call Prabhupada's call for us to cooperate, both in the beginning, middle, and end of his Leela, as his Mahavakya, his great utterance. Without cooperation, nothing can happen. So Prabhupada is underscoring the point there. Together we can do great stuff. Individually, if I just make a faction and go away, I can't do much. Lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to explain why love means to cooperate in devotional service. Explain why serving Krishna is not utopia. Explain how to find unity in diversity. Explain the difference between principles and details. And finally, describe whom the Lord blesses to find unity in diversity. The key to cooperation for spreading Krishna consciousness worldwide. So before questions, I'll just do the transition. Before we look at different ways to access and develop our individual loving relationship with Srila Prabhupada, in the next lesson we'll identify and dispel some misconceptions we may have about him. That's really fun. It's like an exorcism. You cast out demons from your consciousness. Even unconsciously, we may harbor impersonal and sentimental misconceptions about Prabhupada. So we identify 4 impersonal misconceptions, 4 sentimental, and then we just kick them out. Okay, are there any questions, comments?
Yeah. How do we not take advantage of that statement that there's no possibility of disunity in the society of devotees, although there is the element of leaning towards material things? In other words, there's a tinge, or maybe even a bigger element of personal motivation behind my reason for what I want to do. I mean, that's very subtle and cannot be always distinguished.
Yeah, when you read that purport, that's the part that you really start thinking about when Prabhupada said, let's look at that again. Yeah. Whoop. Prabhupada says, disunity between individual souls is so strong within this material world that even in a society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and leaning toward material things. That's where it gets problematic, right? Because I said that the first thing we have to do to find unity and diversity, we have to trust each other's motives. Even if we don't agree on anything, practically, we have to trust that we're really here for the same reason, to please Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya. We're not here for power or whatever, fame or whatever. So, but if we do allow our material desires to enter into that, if we're not always on guard, if we're not always introspective, Prabhupada, just a little aside, Prabhupada says in the 3rd canto, a devotee is as thoughtful as a non-devotee is speculative. So what is our thinking process? Our thinking process is always in terms of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. We check our thoughts, which naturally are coming from the 3 modes of material nature, because we've got a material body and a material mind, and it's always trying to get something for itself. So we have to train our mind to think of pleasing Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and check our mind against what they've said. So that takes a lot of practice. Otherwise, there's every chance, if I stop hearing, that devotional motive will dry up, and the material desires will flood in. So for me, Maharaj, your question is how can we stop this? It's really all about Sangha.
Yeah, I think you answered it perfectly. We have to go to a higher principle. That's Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra.
Yeah, and in that association, we can always, our material desires just show up like big stains on a white cloth. They stick out like a sore thumb. They're embarrassing. But if we're not living in the light of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we can easily mistake. Prabhupada writes about mistaking the creeper for the weeds in the cleansing of the Gundicha temple. And metaphorically, that refers to the heart and how we have to
it's the other way around. The weeds for the creeper, isn't it?
The weeds for the creeper, right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We need referee priests. Yeah, we can't, and how do we know that? We only know that when we're in the right association, really. And then we think properly, we feel properly, we will properly. Otherwise, our thinking, feeling, and willing all proceeds from material desires. And we all go to hell in a handbasket. Right. Okay, yeah, that's, I didn't bring that up, but that's, when I read that part in the line, sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions. No problem with different opinions. And leaning toward material things, that's where there's a problem. When we allow ourselves to go, because we're tatasta, we're marginal energy. We can either go toward the material side or the spiritual side. That's how we're constituted. It's like a little kid, he's at a state fair, say, with his parents. He's hanging onto his parents' hand. And he's okay as long as he hangs onto his parents' hand. As soon as he lets go and starts running around, anything could happen to the kid. So that's what we did. We willfully chose to let go of Krishna to try our luck here in the material world. We're just getting burned. So, got to learn our lesson. You got another?
I think you did your best with that one.
Okay.
That's a discussion. They can keep going.
Yeah, it's another seminar, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Okay, the other side of the room.
What you're thinking about, yes, the challenge of cooperation, and in my limited experience, personally and in the community, how do we have a responsibility both individually and also as a community to understand cooperation, and in one sense, difference of opinions is a taken. But cooperation seems like it's a concept that is, is what it is. There's negotiation, and then we have to cooperate. We have to come to some agreement that at least, everybody feels, okay, I can work with that. Okay, I can work with that. Something like that. The concept is clear. However, it just doesn't. It seems to elude a lot the work that we do as a community. And I'm thinking, well, the classical say, it takes two to tango. What happens, so my question comes, what happens when you feel that the other party is not cooperating? And you still have the responsibility of cooperating. It's an individual responsibility, but if I feel, oh, you know, I don't see the other party also willing to cooperate, then I can, you know, the regular thing, okay, I can work with this, I'm out up here, which is you failing also in your responsibility. So in your experience and with Prabhupada's teachings, you know, how the actual, you know, nitty-gritty application.
How it works, how we get there. One of my favorite conversations on this subject comes June 9th, 1969, Prabhupada's first visit to New Vrindavan. And Prabhupada loved it. He was there for about 6 weeks. He said, if I'm very happy to stay here forever and translate, but it would be my sense gratification. I mean, he had a whole movement to explode around the world. This is June 69. So on June 9th, you'll see a transcript of a conversation. It's, I forget the title now, but it's something like management. How to manage. Now, here's what was going on. There were the two founders of New Vrindavan, under Prabhupada's inspiration, were Hayagriva Das Adhikari, householder, and Kirtanananda Swami, sannyasi. So they were friends, but they had very different ways of doing things. So if you hear this, hearing the conversation's even better, but if you read the transcript, what it comes down to is that those two very strong personalities had each come to the conclusion that if this person's in charge, I have to leave. They couldn't, one of them had to be in charge. And if one was in charge, then the other was going to leave. So they're presenting Prabhupada with this like impossible dilemma, because Prabhupada knows they both have to stay there. They're both required, they're both needed. So over the course of the conversation, you'll very expertly hear how Prabhupada gets both of them to see that they have a higher cause than their own ways and their own desires and their own convictions. And that cause was New Vrindavan. So here's the solution. So first of all, when Prabhupada understood that if one is in charge, the other is going to leave, it was mutual. They both felt like that. So Prabhupada started chuckling. So what to do? What to do? If you're in charge, he's going to leave. If he's in charge, you're going to leave. So Prabhupada gets them to see over the course of time that they're both needed. And here's how he makes a solution. He bases the solution on a varnashram principle. First of all, Prabhupada says, you should have a council, a committee. Like in India, they have panchayat. You know, the community elders in the villages give their verdict on different issues. And then Hayagriva says, but that's democracy. And then Prabhupada, he's cut off, but he's about to say, and you can tell by what he did get out, that we're not about monarchy. It's just about one saintly king. Those days are long gone. Nobody's so qualified that he can be the transcendental autocrat. That's Krishna. He's the transcendental autocrat. So then Prabhupada described how it should really work in New Vrindavan, the leadership. He said, Hayagriva Prabhu, you're a householder. So at New Vrindavan, there were families. There were householders, Paramananda, Satyabhama, and the first male child born in the movement was their first son, Premananda. And so there were others too. Hayagriva was married to Shyamadasi. So you should be in charge, because the farms are for its families, community. It's not just a community of monks. But Kirtanananda Maharaj, he's a sannyasi. He should travel. He should travel and preach and inspire people with the New Vrindavan project, inspire people to come and check it out. Maybe they want to participate in it or become some kind of member or supporter. So you're a sannyasi, you should travel and preach. Now Hayagriva, when Kirtananda Maharaj comes back to New Vrindavan, then he's a sannyasi, he's the spiritual master of all the varnas and ashrams. You know, he should be, while he's there, you should listen to him. So he has them both in charge, but in different times and in different ways. And in the course, it's not just that, but in the course of that, you can hear them, and then after Prabhupada gives that solution, he says, is this all right? And you can hear them kind of hemming and hawing, but ultimately agreeing that, yes, this is the only way to go forward. And so he got them to see that they really both love the New Vrindavan project. And that for it to work, really they both needed to act in different roles, the traveling preacher, the on-site Grihastha manager. And they really did need each other to make the whole thing work. So to get back to your question, the only way, in my experience, that devotees cooperate is when they all, despite their differences, they have some transcendent purpose which unites them. I'll give you one very dramatic example. I was serving in LA in 1970, well, from 76 to 80. One fine morning on Venice Boulevard, a big gas main blows. I mean, it was huge, and the cars that were in the way of that, they got thrown up into the air. It was a big tragedy. A lot of people died, and the laundromat down the alley became a morgue temporarily. And the authorities thought that the whole block, the whole area was going to go in Culver City, the Palms district. So they told us, you guys got to get, you got to evacuate. You got to get your, your valuables out of here, and you got to go way up the street, up the block on Watsika Avenue. So you have never seen 400 people cooperating so fast and so like just, it was like clockwork. People that never even hardly associated before. They were just doing what they could. Rukmini Dwarkadish went way up the block. They were carried up the block, installed in somebody's house. We hit the BBT on the corner of Venice and Watsika. We got all the vital files and computer stuff up the block. We were just, in an hour we had the whole thing secure because we had a common threat here. It was, we thought the whole, under the street, the whole thing was going to blow up or something. So that's, it shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take an external threat to unite us, but that's very often what happens. Prabhupada told us, you can never actually be stopped externally, only internally. And that Prabhupada saw from his own master's mission. Can this mission be stopped? So we have to really find our common cause in the wishes of the founder Acharya, his wishes for whatever it is, however we're accessing the mission right here in Chicago or wherever we are, and find that common cause. I can tell you in Tucson, Arizona, where I live, one big reason the whole thing works is because we're all on Team Sandamani. Sandamani is our Vaishnavi temple president, and she's been there for 30 years. She's the elder, even if she's not, I mean, I'm older than her physically, but she's the elder and she's the pioneer of the community. And she knows every nook and cranny of that place, and she knows exactly what we need at any given time. And we just cooperate with her expert management, vision of what has to be done. And she's really good because she's not just, I made this joke about keeping the trains running on time, but she's not just about that. She's not just about, we have a big Govinda's restaurant, and it's no small thing, as you know from trying it here, to have a restaurant be successful. Well, we've had one for 26 years, and it's just hard work, but we're all on board. And no matter what we're doing in the community, I mean, even I participate. She lets me, teach and write and outreach and stuff. But I'm in there too at a certain time of day. So it's a common cause. That's our family business. Along with the books, we do the books, but we're paying the bills with the customers from Govinda's restaurant, and it's great. I just filled out Sandamani just sent all of us a Tucson News, was it the local paper, I forget the name of it, Tucson Herald survey for the best things in Tucson, and one of the categories is restaurants, and we're right at the top. And we get awards for having the best vegetarian restaurant in Tucson. So we cooperate because we all have a higher cause. We all love her management. We know she cares. She's tough, but she's got the heart of a mother at the same time. So there's no room for our egos. It's all about getting a higher cause, and that's Krishna's cause. So, is that right? Okay, Maharaj were you? Okay, let's, if you're not, you're chomping at the bit or what?
I'm not going to say what I was going to say. And that's more of the story of New Vrindavan, but anyway,
okay.
We'll leave it alone.
Yeah, okay. But that was how Prabhupada handled it, at least for 1969, in one case. Yeah, I know, I lived there too, so I know what happened later, but yes.
Yeah, I don't know how to elaborate this, but not only acting as a team is important, but individually we have to take ownership of what we're doing and what have been assigned, take our, how to say, but if we live here in the temple, this is our house, it's Krishna's house, but also, pretend that it's our house, that we can, not just like family business, is
family business in the spiritual sense.
Yeah, this is ours. This is our life. This is what we do for the purpose of living. This is what drives us to keep going in our advancement. Taking ownership, not neglecting things and doing whatever we have to do just for the purpose of doing things, but without taking care of the elements that are in our disposition. Is my take.
Yeah, we have to be invested in our community, in our service, in how it's affecting people. So that takes maturity, actually. And that comes from observing the example of others, too. If we're receptive to people who are heavily invested in the community, who do care, then we want to be like that. Yeah. Yeah, it takes practice. You had to go cool, you had to...
Trying to see how I present this. Regarding cooperation, so ISKCON has in showing love to Srila Prabhupada, the members of ISKCON are trying to cooperate together, but sometimes that's not possible. So there is a schism, and even some members they leave ISKCON. But following this principle of cooperation, is it not important to still cooperate with even with members of the Hare Krishna movement who may not be in ISKCON, but still we can have partnerships or like work together for a higher cause, which is to please Lord Chaitanya, and so that way we give an example to the whole world instead of like having these fractions.
Right. Factions.
Yeah, factions. Yes, and and not being an example to the general public of cooperation.
It's good, provided we follow Prabhupada's instructions while we're doing that. So, for example, is he the head pujari or just one of the main pujaris in Krishna Balaram Mandir, who was initiated by Narayan Maharaj? Mukunda Dutt, is that his name? Indian devotee? Okay. So, he's serving in ISKCON, even though he didn't take initiation inside ISKCON, because he accepts Srila Prabhupada as his main, primary, foundational spiritual master. Yeah, so that's one example. And I don't know if you were in the class where I told how, because I asked Harishari this, how do we relate to the other Gaudiya groups? And he said, the ones that are friendly, we work with. The ones that aren't, we keep a respectful distance. And one of the last things that Prabhupada did was he created the Bhaktivedanta Swami Charity Trust, which is a trust to help other Gaudiya groups who need help, because Prabhupada wanted to see all the Gaudiya groups working together. Yes, he wanted that. Did I tell the story of Sridhar Maharaj's last visit to Prabhupada in Mayapur? Okay. So, Prabhupada's longtime friend and godbrother, His Holiness Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, paid a visit to Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur in 1976. In 73, Prabhupada had taken a party of devotees across the river to see him at his mutt, Devananda Saraswat mutt. So in 76, Maharaj was returning the visit, returning the favor, and Harishari Prabhu reports about this in his diaries, how Sridhar Maharaj, he was appreciating Prabhupada, how when the Gaudiya Math godbrothers had gone to Europe, they had come back, they were recalled actually by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, called back to India with not much success. And from speaking with those people who had been to Europe, the godbrothers had come to the conclusion that how can it literally be true that in every town and village, Lord Chaitanya's name will be sung? These people are animals. They can't even they can't even consider following the regulative principles from that exchange Bhakti Saranga Maharaj had with the Marquis of Zetland. Swamiji, can you make me a Brahmin? Oh yes, just follow these rules. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no meeting, and no gambling. Impossible! Now, how did Prabhupada introduce the rules to us? Differently. Only when we had gotten a higher taste and we came to him about the rules did Prabhupada post those rules on the bathroom door. He knew how to do it. So Sridhar Maharaj said, but Swamiji, you have done it. You have turned Malechas and Yavadas into Vaishnavas. Therefore, Shaktiavesh. This is the version in the scripture. We're going to see this in lesson 10. Yeah, lesson 10. Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tar Pravartan. So only one who's empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Why? Because he was surrendered, so he was the most empowered. He got the most empowerment because of the way he used his free will to surrender. So Sridhar Maharaj was glorifying Prabhupada, saying that of all the godbrothers, he had actually done it. And then Prabhupada said, you know, Maharaj, this is not one man's job. There are so many disciples now, and I'm constantly traveling. Why don't you join us? Why don't you be the president of ISKCON? And I can be, in other words, still under Prabhupada's direction. He's the founder Acharya of ISKCON. But why don't you help me train them? I can't do it alone. You know, you can organize all the training. all over the world. And so Hari Shari Prabhu reports that Sridhar Maharaj, as Prabhupada was inviting him to come and join him in ISKCON, he said he could see Sridhar Maharaj's eyes looking wistfully, looking of what might have been if he had come out to preach like Swami Maharaj. And now he was being invited, and he wasn't saying yes or no, but he was getting this look in his eyes like, if only I could. Now, Prabhupada left it at that. He didn't press him. And then after Sridhar Maharaj left and went back across the Ganga to his mat, Prabhupada called all the leaders into his room and said, I have just invited my dear godbrother Sridhar Maharaj to come and join us in ISKCON. Now, don't you, because Prabhupada knew that the devotees would hear about it, don't you go to him and canvass him, insist that he do it. Don't you do that. Because I know if these Gaudiya Math people come into ISKCON, there will be trouble. On the one hand, he invited him. On the other hand, he knew that his godbrothers, including his dearest friend in the Gaudiya mission, had a different mood. And it was that different mood that almost destroyed ISKCON in the 80s. When they went to the Gaudiya Math people and asking them the relationship between the new gurus and the GBC. And that's another story. So Prabhupada specifically had a request from his Guru Maharaj. This was told by a brahmachari in the Gaudiya mission, in the Gaudiya Math from years ago, that he witnessed Srila Bhaktisiddhanta personally requesting Abhay Charan Aravinda to always encourage Sridhar Maharaj to get out and preach. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, he's so qualified, he's so realized, but he doesn't go out and preach enough. To be fair, Maharaj always had frail health. That was a concern. You know, he wasn't as physically... Of course, Prabhupada also was in fragile health, but he just ignored it as much as he could. So Prabhupada had a standing order from his Guru Maharaj to always encourage Sridhar Maharaj to extend himself and come out and preach more. So that was kind of what was driving that. And he never gave up on that, even when he knew it was hopeless. Okay, Maharaj has a comment.
Yeah, I just... do you know, actually he did come out in one sense, and he was taking followers from Western countries for a while.
Yeah, I mean disgruntled ISKCONers.
I'm not exactly sure of the quality or the attitude that people were when they came to him, but he was giving initiations and also giving instructions on, and they were Westerners. So I was just wondering how much you knew about that.
Well, he gave them shelter because they had those, I mean, as far as I know, these are all ISKCON people who had left GBC ISKCON, corporate ISKCON, so to speak, because they found it was just intolerable what was going on in the 80s. And it's understandable why they were seeking shelter elsewhere. He did not, did he give them new names? Yeah, in some cases he
I know
did.
he was asking them to chant 4 rounds a day. These were some newer people also.
Okay. Well, as kind of an extension of that, perhaps there were new Westerners, yeah. But it was precipitated by, you know, former leaders in ISKCON going across the river to the Devanand Saraswat Mutt. Yeah, but it was still just him being basically there at his place.
Yeah, but you make the point, it was his health that really restricted him from...
Yeah, that was there.
Because, you know, Bhakti said, and then Prabhupada also said he is extremely learned.
Yes, he's my Shiksha Guru.
Yeah.
Very generous. But in terms of qualification, Sridhar Swami was honest. Shakyavesh.
Yeah, yeah. He said he is non-envious. He had problems with the other godbrothers, but he said, he is non-envious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because Harishar Prabhu mentioned there was another Gaudiya Mat sannyasi in the room when Prabhupada was inviting Sridhar Maharaj to be the president of ISKCON. He was another sannyasi, and his eyes were totally different. It was full of envy. And Harishari says that after they all had left, he gave his impressions to Prabhupada about Sridhar Maharaj and this other sannyasi. And Prabhupada said, yes, you're right. Actually, he's, some of the God brothers actually tried to stop Prabhupada from getting the land in Mayapur. Were giving the devotees, those leaders in 1970 who were getting a minimized, compromised view of Prabhupada. This sannyasi was one of them. So yeah, the God brothers were different. There was some non-envious, some very envious that Prabhupada was letting us call him Prabhupada. Sridhar Maharaj didn't have a problem with that, because he could see what Prabhupada was doing. Yeah. He was honest. Prabhupada was the only one who was doing what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta asked them all to do, to cooperate and spread it all over the world.
And who is it? Krishnadas?
Krishnadas Babaji?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to tell that at the end.
At the end, yeah.
So save that.
Okay.
At the end of lesson 10, after the whole.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
with Ayodhyapati then.
Yeah.
Right, that one, yeah. Now Bibi Govinda Maharaj. Okay. Any other questions about to love is to cooperate? It's the biggest challenge in Kali Yuga. This is the age of non-cooperation. It's the age of my way or the highway, or, it's... Yes.
Gauranga from Chaupadi and Govinda were doing a presentation on how disagreements actually manifest, and not because of differences of opinion, but because of personality conflicts.
Yeah. Yeah, how Prabhupada would solve issues sometimes if, say, I know in the case of two sannyasis couldn't get along, and they're both super sincere. So Prabhupada assigned one to one part of the world, and he assigned another to the opposite part of the world. Good fences make good neighbors, distance sometimes makes good neighbors. Prabhupada recognized these guys are they'll never get along, but they're good, and they're both needed in the movement. They're very valuable devotees. Yeah, so that was one solution. Just separate.
There's so many examples. I was thinking of an example which was here in Chicago many years ago when they were looking for a temple president, and 3 were qualified. One was Govinda Dutt, the other one was, what's his name? He's no longer on the planet.
You mean Sri Govinda?
Sri Govinda, I'm sorry.
Sri Govinda, yeah.
Yeah, Sri Govinda and, what is his name? I can't think of his name. But there were 3. They all were ready and qualified to become the next temple president. And Sri Govinda was the one that got it. And the other 2 left the temple and started their own temples because they really wanted to be in charge. So that was good. One went to Indianapolis and started it. I don't know if you remember his name.
Who?
Oh, I can't think of his name.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, that's good. Right.
They used that dissension to actually expand the movement. Yeah.
It's a big world. Every town and village. That's a 10,000-year project. Okay. So tomorrow morning we're going to do fictional Prabhupads. It's a lot of fun. Please come at 11 a.m. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna.